Day was not nationally observed. And I might add this. When I was a little boy in the 1940s, about 1946, I was in the 2nd grade, and the teacher came into the room. I remember this happening. And she said, "Children, we will no longer be able to salute the flag the way we have been, pledging allegiance." And we held our hand up like this to pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. She said, "Children, that looks too much like Heil Hitler." And we were all so aware of Adolf Hitler because we just won the war in Europe, and Japan had just signed over their surrender. She said, "Somebody has said we need to put our hands over our hearts." Maybe some guy named Bill Smith or something in Washington or something, you know. We used to salute the flag that way. I remember that. All I'm trying to do is show you we don't even know what's going on in America. We've been fooled. The interesting thing is not the rituals of the flag worship go back only as far as the late 19th century, but that Americans think they go back further. We have become so used to the idea that the flag is a sacred object that we cannot imagine a time when it was not considered one. During the Revolution, when men were fighting and dying on the battlefield to establish a new nation, saluting the flag would have been regarded as an empty gesture. The thing to do was go out and join the fighting. That was patriotism. With the invasion of the hordes of immigrants from Europe, hordes with strange names and exotic accents, it was believed that flag rituals were needed to ensure the newcomers' loyalty. That's why they started the rituals. Fear then was behind the movement to adopt the flag rituals, but nobody ever remembers that. It is interesting to speculate what the ethnics might think if they discovered these rituals had been adopted to curb their ancestors. That's all the rituals were adopted for. Americans were taught to salute by extending their right hand palm up and slightly raised. I remember that. This proved embarrassingly similar to the Nazi salute, however, during World War II was dropped. I remember when they dropped it. And then let me just read a couple other things, then we'll get on with the message. What I'm trying to do is say, and we don't know that Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin and George Washington were not Christians. They were deists. A deist is the same thing as a Unitarian. Unitarians believe there is one God out there. They don't believe in the Trinity. They believe He spun all this into space and that He walked away from it, left it up to us to take care of it. They do not believe in the deity of Christ. And Ben Franklin said Jesus never reached his full potential. Ben, you are an idiot. He died for his wife, the church, and gave himself for her. You think these guys are what you think they are? They're not. One cannot mention the flag, of course, without reference to the story that it was Betsy Ross who stitched the first one. She did not, unfortunately. Everything we've been told and been lied about. She didn't. The whole story is made up by her grandson. If anybody was responsible for designing the flag, it was probably Francis Hopkinson. Now, we've all heard of Betsy Ross, but none of us have heard of Francis Hopkinson, have we? Who was given credit by Congress for having done so. It's in the congressional record. But nobody ever tells the American public the truth. Keep them in the dark. But no one individual actually designed the flag. Our first flag commissioned for the Navy in 1776 was simply the basic British Union flag divided by white stripes. It was a British flag. Contrary to the Boy Scout handbook, the blue in the flag does not represent justice, the white is not purity, and the red is not for bravery. Boston did not celebrate the glorious 4th until the end of the Revolution, referring instead to honor the Boston Massacre. The holiday was overlooked by Congress in 1887, for instance, though that was the very year of the Constitution was drafted. And he goes on and on. Let me just read one other thing here about Francis Scott Key, who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. Y'all know how much we're lied to about Christmas and the American flag and Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson said the book of Revelations was the raving of a maniac. Thomas Jefferson rewrote the Bible. I got a copy of it up here. I got a copy. He rewrote it. Said he didn't believe in the resurrection. Didn't believe in the. There's Jefferson's Bible. Sure is little, isn't it? Didn't believe in the resurrection, didn't believe in miracles, and didn't believe in the virgin birth. Thomas Jefferson died and went to hell. Phew. Let me read to you about Francis Scott Key, and then I'll get back to the message, okay? Francis Scott Key. The popularity of the Star-Spangled Banner, if it can still be said to be popular, is due to much to the fabulous circumstances under which it was written. Francis Scott Key actually was fortunate enough to watch the bombardment of Fort McHenry, which guarded Baltimore, and he actually waited through the night to see if our flag was still there. But did the flag he saw at dawn's early light fly through the night? As anyone can testify who has seen the flag, which is on display at Smithsonian, it is huge, 30 feet by 42 feet. Boy, you had to have a big wind blowing, didn't you? The stars alone measure 2 feet across, point to point. For this flag to have survived the night, the fort was under attack. A stormy, rainy, windy night is almost inconceivable. Walter Lord, who wrote an acclaimed book on the War of 1812, is of the opinion that it probably did not fly all night. If there was a flag on the pole in the morning, as there undoubtedly was, it was probably hoisted up the pole that morning. The American hoisted a small, superb, and splendid ensign on their battery. This, says Lord, is most likely the flag Key saw. If there was a flag that flew all night, it would have been the fort's so-called storm flag, a small flag designed expressly for bad weather. But how Key could have seen it is a mystery. It was 8 miles away. That Francis Scott Key is associated in the American mind with the War of 1812 and is thought of in connection with one of the great battles of the war is ironic because Key hated the war. He told his mother he thought the United States was to blame for the conflict and deserved to lose. That's what Francis Scott Key said about the War of 1812. In letters home to friends and neighbors, Wicked condemned the abominable war as a lump of wickedness. Key volunteered to defend the capital, but according to his biographer, his service as a soldier was brief and uneventful, and when the war was over, he confessed he was glad his most thrilling moment had occurred when he was knocked off his horse by a bone of bacon and landed in the river. About the song itself, there are several myths. It was not immediately popular and was not adopted as the national anthem until 1931, 8 years before I was born. That's when we got a national anthem. Army and Navy bands did not begin playing it on a regular basis until the 1890s. Everyone knows it is sung to the tune of an old English drinking song. Why they got those high notes in it, I don't know. And then I've got Legend, Lies, and Cherished Myths of American History by Mr. Shankman. I got a new book, and gosh, I can't get into all this. I got a couple of new books. I got a book called Sundown Towns. Has anybody ever heard of Sundown Towns? Sundown Towns was where black people were not allowed, towns black people were not allowed to go into after sundown in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they've still got sundown towns all over Illinois. And they were slaughtering black people in the 60s because of sundown towns. And they had these signs outside the towns that said, ain't no black people allowed, except they didn't say black people. Anna, Illinois is one of the sundown towns, and it stands for Ain't No Blank Allowed. That's what Anna, Illinois stands for. And we are just living blind. America is blind and deaf about everything. In fact, what's so amazing, they had about 476 sundown towns in Illinois, and they only had 6 in Mississippi. Now figure that. It just, I mean, we live in a crazy nation. Nuts, don't we? I've got a new book about Native America discovered and conquered. Thomas Jefferson, Lewis and Clark, and Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny was, they had something called the Doctrine of Discovery, and it was about the European Caucasians. And this Doctrine of Discovery says that if European or Caucasians, if they go into a new land, they can claim this for their own, no matter who lives there. In the American